Y'all thought I was going to hit you with the welcome back Carter joint. Nope, not today. But I do want to give you the recap of the types of people who suffer from imposter syndrome. The perfectionist, the natural genius, the soloist, the expert, and the superhero. Those 5. So, I think we've all, at some point in time, fallen into one of these categories where we have allowed the opinions of others to affect our performance. Whether that be in the classroom, whether that be on the job, whether that be as a parent, whether that be as a spouse. And I'll be the first one to tell you that me, your host, Oliver Green, has fallen into some of those same categories. I'll be the first to tell you that when your self-confidence is not where it needs to be, you look to people to make decisions for you. You look to people for their approval. And when you don't get their approval, it kind of messes with your head. You know, as I scratch my head. Because you think if I ask you a question, you expect an answer. But I think one of the things that we forget is everybody can't answer all of your questions. Yep, I'm talking to you. Everybody can't answer all of your questions. A lot of times, more times than not, I would probably start with this. When you are going through something and you are having a moment and you want to pick up the phone and put your business out on Facebook, or you want to call your homie, or you want to call your friend girl that is going to side with you and give you right what it is that you're looking for in the moment, put the phone down, get on your knees and pray. Have a conversation with God. Allow God to speak to you in the way that you need to be spoken to. And trust me, from personal experience, He'll talk to you if you let Him. He'll talk to you if you let Him. He has an answer for you, but in order to get the answer, once you have the conversation, you got to do a couple things. You got to be willing, and you have to have an open mind. You can't ask God a question and then tell Him how to do what it is that you're asking Him the question about. It don't work like that. Okay. It don't work like that. God talks to me when I'm running. And when I openly realize that and admitted that's when the conversations happen, things begin to change. How I think about things change. How I respond to things change. Now, granted, I don't always get it right. I still mess up. I know when I should have ran and I didn't. Cause and effect. But you want to know how to overcome the feelings associated with imposter syndrome? I know you do. You're asking me. Tell me how I can overcome the feelings associated with imposter syndrome, right? Okay, so let's go. So I have 7 strategies that can help. And for those that have not listened before, I tell you, I do my first segment and then I come on and I want you to walk away with something. I want you to walk away with a tangible tip to help you. I want you to walk away with, to hear something that if nothing else, it makes you tell somebody about my show. Sundays, Thursdays, 3 o'clock. Here on Gospel Impact Radio. I drop a podcast on Fridays at 2:11 p.m. But with that said, here's the first one. You have to learn the facts. You have to learn the facts. And let me explain. Learning the facts is you have to address where the issue has come from and why is it and how and why it's contributing to the imposter syndrome. Anybody that has heard me before, you've heard me, you know my story. My wife asked me a question. We were going through some issues, and she says, let's get to the root cause. Why do you do the things that you do? And I'm like, what, the root cause? And it made me mad. Like, I'll be honest. I was mad. Ask me why I do what I do. But in her asking me that question, learning about the facts, I had to do something. I had to be honest with me about my past. And how many of us know some of us haven't always had the best past. Some of us aren't proud of the things that we've done in our past, and we like to leave the past in the past. But not leaving it in, dealing with things that happened in the past and being able to have an answer as to why I've done them and why I was still doing them. It was a great exercise. It hurt. I was mad. But at the end of the day, regardless of what daddy issues I had, regardless if my dad wasn't there or not, regardless if I wanted to blame him for some of the things that I was doing or the lack of, how many of you know, and if you didn't, you're going to know now, when you deal with the root of a thing and you are honest about that thing, when it's on the table now, you can no longer use the excuse, my daddy didn't tell me, or I didn't know. Now you know, and the clock is ticking. You heard me? Now you know, and the clock is ticking. But in order to get to that point, you have to be honest with you. Repeat after me. I, insert your name, will be honest about learning the facts. Okay. Number 2. You have to share your feelings. Sharing your imposter feelings with others can not only reduce the fact of you feeling lonely, but it can open the door for others to share what they see in you. And if you remember, I told you that one of the things about imposter syndrome is your perception of how people see you. But it's your perception. It's not what they've said about you. So we have to get to a place where you're able to share your feelings. When you share your feelings, trust me, you will get to a place where it opens the door for people to say how they feel about you. But let me be real clear. You have to be very strategic about who you share your thoughts with. Because you can't tell everybody your business. I'll be honest. You can't tell everybody your business. You may think that you can, but you can't. So number 3, you have to be able to celebrate your success. Your successes. So remember, I'm giving you 7 ways of how to overcome the feelings associated with imposter syndrome. Number 3 again is celebrate your successes. One of the major things people who are People who suffer with imposter syndrome, they struggle with the imposter feelings, and they tend to brush off their successes. Stop downplaying your success. Stop downplaying and not accepting your accomplishments. Celebrate your successes. If you don't celebrate you, why you expect somebody else to do it? I'm gonna leave that there. Number 4, let go of perfectionism. Let go of perfectionism. You don't have to lower the bar, but adjusting your standards for success can make it easier to see and internalize your accomplishments. You don't have to lower the bar, but adjusting your standards just a little bit can make it easier for you to internalize your accomplishments. Focus on your progress rather than aiming for perfection. Focus on your progress rather than aiming for perfection. Why? Because aiming for perfection and not hitting it, and then you putting yourself down and thinking that you're less than, it's creating a wedge in you. It's creating a wedge from you working to become the best you possible, because you stuck on the perfection part. One of the biggest things I think we suffer from, or that we deal with, and we won't have a conversation because it allows us men, it puts us in a vulnerable state, is admitting that we're not hitting the mark. We're not hitting the mark as a husband. We're not hitting the mark as a parent. We're not hitting a mark in our leadership group at church. We're not hitting the mark at work. We're not hitting the mark. And when we don't hit the mark, what happens? We look for other things to make us feel good, whether that be sex, drugs, rock and roll. I think you understand. But if you don't, if you're not hitting the mark at home with your spouse, you go find a shorty. If you're not hitting, if things are just so tough and you don't have a friend group, you turn to drugs. Things are just overwhelming and rock and roll is whatever. My show, I could put whatever title on. It's just whatever. But if you don't get a handle on those things, you will self-implode. And you'll have to have those things in order to feel whole. If you don't have a friend group, get one. But in order to get to a place where you feel comfortable enough to even show up, because that's half the battle. Showing up is half the battle. Trust me, if you show up, you'll be received. It's the when you don't show up and you tell yourself all the things that we do. I don't matter, I don't belong, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny. Show up. And when you show up, all those things that you've told yourself as the reason why you weren't going to show up, you'll realize that you matter. We're in a series at my church, and I am valuable. I am valuable. You are valuable. But what I've said is, you can hear it all day long. But if you don't think that you're valuable, it's just words on a piece of paper. It's just something coming out of my mouth. So we, as men, have to get to a place where we understand that when we have to want to show up. And when you want to show up, you're letting yourself and somebody else know that you feel valued, but that you need help. And it's okay to get help. You got to figure out what your root cause is. You figure out what your root cause is, then you could begin to make some changes. So, number 5, cultivate self-comparison. Try to observe when you have the imposter feelings, like trigger. Try to recognize when the trigger is that you are having this imposter syndrome feeling, like when it begins to surface, and then how you respond to them. Because when you realize the trigger, and when you know when it's coming, and you know the feeling that, from the feeling that you're having, then you can begin to understand, and you can begin to track, and you can begin to play back how you responded in that moment. A lot of times we don't do the playback. We don't do the tracking, and we don't do the triggers. We know what they are, but we don't acknowledge them. And then when they happen, we don't want to have the self-control to stop them. I know I've always had an anger problem. And there was a point in time that anger felt good. It really did. I wanted to be mad. I would look to be mad. I would do things to be mad at people because I enjoyed how it made me feel. But how many people talk about that? Like I said, I'm here to help in the process, so we don't get stuck. When we get stuck, we don't accomplish anything. So, it's about learning to recognize those feelings. It's about learning truly to be okay with the person that you are. And be okay with the person that you are without all your stinking accomplishments. Not to discount them, not to take away from them, but you have to be okay with you without the things, without the degree, and without the experiences, and without all your travel and all your, you have to be okay with you. If you are not okay with you, guess what? You won't have a problem. Okay, all right. 6, you have to share your failures. And you got to discuss them with people. Now, you want to test, you want to test it out, have a conversation with God. I mean, he already knows what they are, but have a conversation. See what he says. But if you're looking to get healing in a situation, you have to share your feelings. So you have to discuss them with people. Understanding that you are more than what you didn't accomplish. Let me say it again. You are more than what you didn't accomplish. Sometimes that's where we get stuck. We get stuck on the fact that I said that I was going to make $100,000 in 6 months, and it didn't happen. Because that was me. I said, make $50,000 in 6 months, and it didn't happen, and I felt so dejected. But I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to feel like a failure. I didn't want anybody. It was the perception about how people saw me. I have a job. My kids are pretty okay. My wife, she's the bomb. But Oliver wasn't feeling comfortable, confident with Oliver. So guess what happened? Oliver started to suffer. Oliver became withdrawn because Oliver didn't feel that he could talk to somebody else about what was going on. I can only give you, I can tell you about my research and I can give you my personal experience, but you have to figure out what works for you. And understand, you have to be honest. And you have to be honest with you. If you can't be honest with you, you ain't gonna be honest with nobody else. But anyway, number 7. Yep, number 7. Accept it. Don't be stuck in all that you think you can't or you aren't. Accept who you are. And don't be stuck on all the things that you didn't do or all the things that you're not right now. What I will say to you is, if you want to do, there's somebody out there that will help you do. But we have to get past ourselves. Yep, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to me. We have to get past ourselves to figure out and understand that asking for help is okay. So, imposter syndrome, it's a thing, but it doesn't have to be. It's a thing because you want it to be. It's a thing because you've allowed it to be. My question to you is, now that you've heard all this, now that I've given you these tips, what are you going to do? That's right. What are you going to do from this point forward? I'm curious. How are you going to move forward? How are you going to move forward in this current day and age? I hope that I have said something to you. I hope that what it is that I've said to you makes sense. And if not, reach out. We can have a conversation. I'd love to have a dialogue with you. I'd love to be your accountability partner. I'd love to hear the fact that you listened and you heard what it is that I said and it makes sense. But I'm over here and you're over there and you have to take the next step. I am Oliver Green, and I wouldn't do you any service if I didn't tell you, deal with your daddy issues today. Otherwise, they will deal with you tomorrow. Talk soon. Peace.